Have you ever seen something strange in life and thought it was a sign from the universe meant just for you? And then you started waiting for a miracle to appear, waiting for someone to come and pull you out of those dark, hopeless days. But the more you wait, the more exhausted you feel. The more you hope, the more you end up disappointed. Maybe it's not that the universe is silent, but that you misunderstood what it was trying to say. Today, I want to share with you a story about an orphan girl and her journey to realize, I wasn't born to be rescued. I was born to become the one who rescues. In a small town on the edge of a forest, there lived a girl as quiet as a falling leaf in autumn, light, fragile, and seemingly leaving no trace on the lives around her. To the townsfolk, she had no name, just the orphan girl people mention in passing. Her parents had died when she was very young, leaving her alone with a world that was vast, cold, and unfeeling. She grew up on the scraps of neighbors' pity, leftover bread, fleeting glances filled with half-hearted sympathy and quiet indifference. She never complained about her fate, but she never dared to dream big, either. Her days drifted by like a sailboat without wind, slowly, aimlessly, lost in the current of life with no harbor in sight. She believed in miracles, in the so-called signs from the universe she heard about in other people's stories. Once, a stranger gave her a scarf on a rainy day, and she thought, maybe heaven is watching over me. Another time, a stray cat curled up at her feet, and she smiled, maybe the universe knows I'm lonely. But those moments, they came and went. They didn't fill an empty stomach. They couldn't keep her warm through the winter nights. She lived like a candle flickering in the wind, ready to be snuffed out at any moment. Every morning, she would walk through the town, eyes quietly pleading at every window, every passing face, hoping someone might smile, hoping someone might offer just enough for her to keep going. But most just walked by as if she were invisible. Her existence created no ripples in the world around her. She had grown so used to being forgotten that even she began to forget she once had dreams. She once wanted to learn how to paint, to have a home, to have someone call her family. But time wore everything down until all that remained was a girl sitting by the roadside with eyes that knew how to smile but were hollow inside. She no longer asked for anything from life. She just lived quietly and waited quietly, waiting for a miracle, a sign, or maybe a hand from the heavens to pull her out of the darkness she had grown so used to she now called a home. One early morning, before sunlight had touched the rooftops, the girl quietly crawled out from beneath her tattered blanket on the sidewalk. The hunger from the night before still gnawed at her, sharp and unrelenting. The familiar faces in town no longer looked at her with pity, only wary glances now, or the cold indifference of shuttered windows. No one wanted to see her anymore, and perhaps she no longer wanted to see herself either, reflected in that frail shadow cast along the pavement. That day, hunger led her to the edge of town, where a small garden lay tucked behind a rotting wooden fence, heavy with fruit trees, their branches drooping with ripe offerings. She had never done anything against her conscience before, but today, hunger spoke louder than pride. Stepping lightly, she crept toward the fence, eyes darting, hand reaching for a red apple gleaming in the early sun. But just as her fingers brushed the fruit, the door of the nearby wooden house burst open. A man, the garden's owner, stormed out, his loud voice cracking through the silence and startling her heart into panic. Without thinking, she ran full speed past the fence, across the field, down the worn paths that led deep into the woods. Wind lashed against her face, her heartbeat pounding like thunder in her chest. Not because she feared being caught, but because for the first time in her life, she felt she had lost the only thing she still possessed, her dignity. She kept running until all the noise behind her faded, leaving only the rustling of leaves and the jagged rhythm of her breath. When she finally realized she was deep within a thick forest, she sank down beside a tree, clutching her chest as tears quietly spilled down her face. She didn't know who she was running from, or if she was running from herself. But then, in the profound stillness of the ancient woods, she saw something strange. On a moss-covered rock not far from where she sat was a massive eagle, its wings twisted and broken. It couldn't fly. Each time it tried to lift its wings, its body collapsed like a leaf crushed by the wind. The girl froze, watching silently. She had no idea how such a creature had survived in a wild place like this, so full of danger. She held her breath, hiding beneath the leaves, too scared to move closer. But for the first time in many long, blurry months, her eyes had found something to truly look at, and they followed that eagle, and the fragile thread of life trembling within every breath it took. A question began to stir in her mind. How? Is it still alive out here? Who's helping it? She didn't yet know that a strange answer was on its way, one that would change her life forever. The girl sat still beneath the forest canopy, hidden beneath a low shrub, her eyes fixed on the creature barely clinging to life atop a moss-covered rock. The eagle, though clearly weakened, still carried a noble air. Its brown-gray feathers were tangled and unkempt, and the wings that once touched the sky now dragged behind like two torn pieces of cloth. It made no sound, no struggle. It only lifted its head weakly, panting, its once piercing eyes dulled by exhaustion and hunger. The girl felt as if she were looking into a mirror, seeing her own reflection in the eagle's broken stare. A quiet survivor in a world that didn't care. Wounded by life, too tired to fight back. Alone, silent, fading in a place no one noticed. And then, suddenly a shadow swept across the distant sky, swift as lightning. The girl looked up. Another eagle, larger, stronger, its wings outstretched with effortless grace, circled above before gliding down gently in front of the wounded one. In its talons, it carried a piece of fresh meat. No call, no signal, no words, but the strong eagle laid the meat down and without hesitation took flight once more, vanishing into the sky. It left without a sound, without needing to be thanked. The injured eagle watched it go, then slowly, carefully reached for the food, taking small bites as if each one were a miracle sent from the heavens. The girl held her breath. Something stirred deep within her, a flood of emotions she couldn't name. Awe, gratitude, disbelief. But in that quiet, fragile moment, her heart touched something beyond logic, something sacred, a silent intervention from the universe. A sign. The universe won't leave anyone behind, she whispered. A single tear fell, not out of sadness, but because for the first time in what felt like forever, her heart felt warm in the cold of the forest. No one had ever reached out to her before. No hand had ever lifted her from the dark. But what she had just witnessed felt like a gentle reassurance from the stars, that if a broken eagle could be cared for, then maybe, just maybe, the universe had a plan for her too. Hope, something she had long since lost, returned, flickering like sunlight filtering through the trees. And for the first time in a long while, she began to believe, if I wait long enough, someone will come, like that bird, with something miraculous. The girl stepped out from under the shrub as the sky began to fade into the soft gold of late afternoon. The sun's last rays scattered across the forest like forgotten memories, faint, warm, and fleeting, just like the thoughts stirring in her heart. She hadn't eaten all day, yet she didn't feel hunger anymore. Her heart was full of something strange, as if she had just touched a miracle. All the way back to the edge of the woods, her mind kept circling the image of the wounded eagle being cared for. She imagined that some unseen deity had witnessed the creature's pain and sent a messenger, another eagle, to offer help. Maybe the universe doesn't speak in words, but in quiet signals like that. And maybe the sky was watching her too. The thought lit something inside her, something that shook her loose from years of sorrow. She smiled, for the first time in so long. As she neared the outskirts of town, she found a tall tree with a view over the forest and sat beneath it. She didn't know what she was waiting for, but her heart believed someone would come. A person, a hand, a miracle. That day passed slowly. Then night fell. She remained beneath the tree, her back pressed against the rough bark, her eyes gazing into the deep, dark canopy. No one came. Still, she didn't falter. "The universe is testing me," she whispered. "I just need to wait a little longer." The second day came. The sun rose high, then sank again. Her stomach twisted violently. Her lips cracked. The night wind howled through the branches with a ghostly edge, but she endured it. Whenever she felt weak, she thought of the eagle and reminded herself, if it could survive without flying, then I can survive without running. But by the end of the second day, the hunger turned into pain. Not a quiet ache, but a scream that tore through her mind. Her legs were numb. Her lips had turned pale and blue. Her resolve, once burning bright, began to flicker. Suddenly she cried, not out of despair, but out of confusion. Why did the universe help the eagle, but not me? She choked out to the empty air. No one answered. Only the wind replied, slipping through the trees like a breath from the invisible. What she didn't know was that the miracle had already come, just not in the form she expected. And what she believed today, about help, about signs, about survival, wasn't wrong, but it wasn't the whole truth either. On the morning of the third day, as the mist still hung low over the treetops, the girl dragged herself away from the tree that had sheltered her through 2 long, cold, hungry nights. Her legs trembled, her vision blurred from exhaustion. No miracle had come. No one had appeared. Only hunger remained, numbness, and a quiet kind of disappointment creeping into her heart, silent but piercing. She walked aimlessly, stumbling over soft hills covered in fallen leaves, gripping tree branches for balance. Each step felt like dragging a boulder inside her chest. One question echoed in her mind over and over again. Why? Why was the eagle helped, but not me? As the sun rose higher, she saw a man sitting on a large rock beside a stream, his hair and beard silver white, wearing a tattered cloak, his eyes deep and still like a quiet lake. She hesitated before approaching. Despite her exhaustion, a trace of caution still lingered in her steps. But when he turned and nodded gently at her, she knew she could sit. She didn't wait for him to ask. Everything she had held back for the past 3 days burst out like a dam breaking. She told him everything, from the eagle scene to the 2 long days she had waited for a miracle and the ache of disappointment tearing through her heart. Choking back tears, she said, "I thought if I waited patiently, like that eagle, the universe would send someone as savior. But no one came. I just want to know, why did the heavens help it, but not me?" The old man was silent for a long time, then offered a gentle smile. He spoke slowly, his voice low and warm, like wine through the forest. "My dear child, the universe has a plan for every living thing. What you saw, that wasn't wrong. But what you understood, it wasn't quite right." He looked her in the eyes, his gaze full of compassion and truth. "You thought you were meant to be like the injured eagle, waiting to be saved. But have you ever considered that maybe the universe wanted you to be like the other eagle, the strong one who flew in, shared its food, and helped the weaker one survive? Have you ever thought, maybe you were born to be the miracle, not just wait for one?" She froze. His words sliced through the fog in her mind like a blade. Her heart stirred, not from hunger, not from fear, but from a sudden light. The man stood, smiled, and began to walk away. His voice drifted back to her. "Sometimes you're not saved, because you're the one who was chosen to save." And in that moment, she understood. Some signs don't come to make us sit and wait. They come to make us rise. The girl stood once more in the forest, surrounded only by the wind, the birds, and the trembling rhythm of her own heartbeat. But now, the silence no longer frightened her. She didn't feel alone anymore. She felt clarity. It was as if someone had gently wiped away the dust that had long clouded her heart. The wise man's words echoed in her mind. You weren't saved because you were the one chosen to save others. That sentence pierced through the fog of confusion she had wandered in for so long. And suddenly, she understood. A miracle isn't always someone coming to lift you up. Sometimes, the real miracle is standing up on your own. For years, she had believed she was a victim of life, weak, abandoned, in need of rescue. But never had she asked herself, what if I was the one chosen to rescue someone else? Maybe the pain she had endured wasn't meant to break her, but to help her understand, to build compassion, and to give her the strength to lift up those who were struggling just like she had. She returned to town as the sun dipped below the horizon. The streets looked the same as always, but something inside her had changed. Her eyes no longer searched for a free meal, a pitying glance, or a miracle from the heavens. Her eyes now searched for a job to start, a small action to give, a place where she could be useful. The next day, she found work cleaning at a tiny diner on the corner. Later, she met a woman who owned a pet shop and offered to help care for the sick and aging animals. Each day that passed, she learned to find joy in the small things, to observe, to listen, and to give the kindness she had once longed so deeply to receive. Life wasn't always easy. There were still days she felt tired and moments when loneliness returned like an old shadow. But this time, she didn't sit and wait for someone to lift her. She wiped her tears, took a deep breath, and kept going. Because now she knew, if she wasn't meant to wait for a miracle, she was the miracle someone else was waiting for. The universe hadn't abandoned her. It was simply showing her the way to step into the journey she was born to live. Time passed. The girl who once sat curled up beneath a forest tree, waiting for a miracle to fall from the sky, had become someone entirely different. Not because of her looks or money or status, but because of her eyes. Her gaze now was steady, warm, and deep, as if within her lived an entire sky of peace. She no longer asked the universe, why did others get saved and not me? Because now she understood, some people aren't born to be saved. They're born to learn how to rise and become a light for those still lost in the dark. Those who crossed paths with her would describe a simple girl, quiet, humble, never drawing attention, yet always appearing exactly when someone needed her. A cup of water for the homeless man on the corner. A word of encouragement to the intern ready to give up. An umbrella shared with a stranger in the rain. Small things, but piece by piece, they softened the hard, chaotic lives of those around her. She wasn't wealthy. She wasn't famous. But by choosing not to wait, not to give in, and instead choosing to live with quiet kindness, she had done something extraordinary. She had become a miracle in someone else's life. And if anyone ever asked her, what changed your life? She would smile and gently say, it was the moment I realized that miracles aren't something you wait for. They're something you choose to become. Maybe you, listening to this story right now, have also waited for something magical to happen. Maybe you felt forgotten, tired, even hopeless. But remember, the universe's silence is not its rejection. Sometimes, it's a whisper that you were born to be something extraordinary for yourself and for others. You don't have to do something grand. You just have to begin. You just have to take a step. You just have to choose the light instead of waiting for it. And one day, you'll realize you're the miracle this world has been waiting for. Sometimes in life, we easily misunderstand the signs that fate sends our way. We think we've been abandoned, forgotten, when in truth, we're being guided toward a greater purpose. Not everyone is chosen to be saved, but some, like that girl, are born to become the ones who bring light to others. If you're tired right now, if you're standing at the edge, unsure whether to give up or keep going, then remember this. Miracles don't always come from the outside. Sometimes the real miracle is you. You don't need to wait for someone to show up and change your life, because the change within you might just be what changes someone else's entire world.